What's up, everybody? Nate here. So I think it's safe to say that there is a ton of craziness in the world right now. You have inflation hitting new record highs just about every single month. You have the Russia-Ukraine situation that is causing rippling effects all throughout our world economy, supply chain issues, and on top of all of that, the Great Resignation, which is hitting businesses, companies, and our work culture right here at home every single day. And in 2022, it looks like there's going to be a ton of massive changes to our economy and our country. And right now, there is a much bigger threat looming over the United States and the rest of the world, a potential recession. In fact, because of everything that's going on and how interconnected our entire planet is, there's kind of the perfect storm brewing for a worldwide recession. And it could be coming as soon as this year. So today, I want to talk all about the three major things that are kind of brewing right now in the world that could cause a recession here in the United States. We're going to be talking about what's going on right now, what happened in the past, and what we can expect for the future of our economy and country. But before I break all of this down, do me a quick favor and hit smash or destroy that thumbs up button below and ring that notification bell too. Both of those two things are completely free and they help to show me that you like this video and that you want to see even more just like it. Thank you so much for doing that. And now let's talk all about what is happening in our economy right now and what might be causing a recession in the future. So the first thing we need to talk about is inflation. Now, inflation has been going up steadily since about the mid parts of 2020. And by January 2022, it hit an over 40-year high of around 7.5%. And it doesn't look like inflation is going to stop anytime soon, as we still have some pretty serious factors going on in the United States and the world right now. The Ukraine-Russia war is making inflation go up even higher in the United States. This is because Russia is a massive supplier of all the things that we use every single day. Things like oil and precious metals and wheat. There's even talks right now amongst the United States government and businesses to completely ban Russian-made and produced oil in the US. Now, the Russia-Ukraine war has only been going on for 2 weeks, but in that 2-week period, the price of gas in the United States has gone up from around $80 to $90 a barrel all the way up to well over $130 a barrel. The OPEC nations that produce most of the oil in the entire world are still keeping the supply of oil at a relatively high level. However, without Russia, we're still missing some. But right now, it's incredibly difficult to get all of those goods and services out of Russia to the United States and other countries. That's causing inflation to go up here at home because now Americans have to pay a lot more for all of the same goods and services. That is one of the biggest side effects of inflation. You have price instability in your economy, so prices are going to fluctuate extremely rapidly almost every single day. And the bigger issue is that prices typically don't go down, they only go up. I mean, in some cases, you're going to see prices go back down eventually, but right now, prices have only gone up in the United States and the rest of the world. That means that consumers and Americans can't buy all the same things they were buying because everything costs more now. So what does that lead Americans to do? Well, they're not going to spend as much because they don't have as much money to buy things. And in turn, you then have businesses making a lot less profit. So all of those publicly traded companies on the New York Stock Exchange and even some private companies are not going to be making as much money anymore. Ultimately, that means a lower expansion rate. So you're not going to see these companies able to hire as many workers. You're not going to see them able to build as many factories. That's only going to hurt inflation even more because we have some pretty serious supply chain issues in our country right now, stemming all the way back to the pandemic. But inflation is not just being caused by the Russia-Ukraine situation. We have that super high demand for all things in our economy brought on by the United States federal government and the Federal Reserve. You see, back in March of 2020, the Federal Reserve and the United States government printed trillions of dollars, and they gave it out to everyday average Americans in order to lift us out of the recession. That's right, back in 2020, we also faced a recession. I mean, we literally were in the midst of a recession because we had 2 quarters of economic shrinking in our country. That's the basic definition of what a recession is, and that's where we were in 2020. 2020. So the Federal Reserve wanted to print a ton of money. That way they could give it to Americans and they could go out and buy things. They could spend money, which is ultimately how our economy grows. And honestly, it worked. At least in the short term, the United States came out of that recession faster than we ever have in American history. But it also created some pretty serious problems because during that time, the United States printed and threw more money at the pandemic problem than we pretty much ever have in our history. We instituted easy money policies. So this was 0% interest rate from the Federal Reserve and trillions of dollars in stimulus. So that way, even if people weren't working, even if people weren't making that much money, they were still going to be getting a ton of cash, at least in the short term. Now flash forward to 2022, businesses cannot keep up with production. They can't make enough because Americans have way too much demand for everything. And because Americans have so much demand for everything and they're buying so much, that signals to businesses that they do need to make more. And in order to do that, they've got to start raising their prices. And couple that with the Ukraine-Russia situation, well, you now have inflation that is surging in the United States. Energy and food are some of the biggest parts of the consumer price index, which pretty much measures inflation on a month-to-month basis. We know that energy costs are going to go up. They already are going up in the United States. I mean, me personally, I filled up my gas tank just 2 weeks ago at $3.29 a gallon. Just this morning, gas was a little over $4. 70-cent increase in 2 weeks is extremely uncommon. And that fact alone could signal that the United States is about to enter a recession. Anytime in American history that gas prices have gone up by 100% or more in a 1-year span, the United States has entered a recession. And to be completely fair here, you got to look at the whole situation in context. I mean, when this has happened in the past, it wasn't just gas prices that were going up. The entire world was in turmoil. There was wars or there was other types of political situations that were causing the United States to go into a recession. It wasn't just gas, but gas is a pretty huge indicator. And with that going up alone, you're going to see inflation continue to rise. And some experts are saying that on the next consumer price index, which comes out on March 10th, 2022, you might see inflation go all the way up to nearly 10%. That would be one of the fastest increases in American history. And the fact of the matter is, it could continue to go up, even pushing rates like we saw in the late 70s and 1980s, when inflation was around 14 to 15%. How could that cause a recession? Well, Americans aren't spending any money. Their budgets are so thin that they're only buying things that they need, which means your travel industry is going to get hit. Consumer products that are not necessities are going to get hit. And even grocery store chains are going to get hit because Americans, again, are just going to buy essentials. And it seems pretty simple, but the solution would be, well, businesses just pay your people more. That way people have more money and then they can go out and spend. That kind of is counterproductive at a certain level, because if businesses pay their employees more, then the employees can buy more. That signals to businesses that they need to produce more goods because now you have people buying more, which means prices ultimately go up. And even if businesses didn't raise prices and they only paid people more, well, how are the businesses going to get more money to pay their employees more if people in the United States are not purchasing more of their goods and services? These businesses have to come up with the money somewhere so they can pay people more, but that might mean cutting their staff. And that has been a big problem in the United States in 2022 so far, which brings us to the second reason why the US may face a recession sometime soon: the Great Resignation, anti-work movement, and labor shortages. It's been estimated that around 30 to 40 million Americans have quit their jobs over the past year or so. In November 2021 alone, a record 4.5 million Americans quit their job. What's crazy is this is all completely voluntary. Americans are shifting right now. They're shifting away from traditional careers that potentially exploit their labor and offer them not much more than just a paycheck. Millions of Americans don't want that right now. They want a career, they want something they're passionate about, and they want better benefits and better pay. Not only that, but the switch from the office to work from home life has been pretty staggering for businesses. A lot of companies want their employees to go back to the office, but workers don't want to go back to the office, especially if they can work from home and prove that they can do a good job from their house. So they are able to quit their job, and now companies are left with not enough staff to produce enough goods for everyone in the country. Now, this situation has started to improve a bit. We're starting to see more Americans get employed in what the Federal Reserve calls maximum employment. So you have a good amount of Americans who are actually employed that can be employed. But there are still roughly around 10 million job openings in the United States. That's a record as well. So you have all of these companies that need employees, but employees and workers are not submitting applications for those jobs. And that's likely to continue. But this is a bigger issue because not only do you have businesses not able to produce enough things, you also have millions of Americans who are not working. Now, they're not necessarily unemployed because they quit their jobs. If you quit your job, you're usually not able to collect unemployment. So Americans are living off of their savings accounts right now, which means we could start to see millions of Americans drain their bank accounts. Now, 6 months ago, this wasn't such a big deal because we were starting to see people quit their job and they had a ton of money to back themselves up. Banks were reporting that saving rates in 2020 and in 2021 hit record highs. But slowly and surely, that's going to go away because people are now jobless and they don't have a lot to fall back on except for their savings. In 2021 as well, we saw credit card debt go up at a faster rate than we ever have in American history. Now, that could be because Americans in 2020 got so much stimulus money that they paid off their credit cards. And in 2021, as the pandemic was starting to go away, they started to spend again. That's good for our economy as long as it's controlled. However, right now, it could also be that Americans are running out of money, so they're putting things on credit. With interest rates from the Federal Reserve at 0%, it's a lot easier to pay off that credit card debt. But the Federal Reserve in March of 2022 said they're going to start raising their interest rates. That could mean all of that debt gets way more expensive for everyday Americans. Meaning that budget from before that was super affected by inflation is gonna get even thinner. But that's on the American side. Now, in my opinion, I think it's a great thing that millions of Americans are kind of sticking it to these businesses and corporations that have not been looking out for their interests for a long time now. I want businesses to offer better benefits and better pay to Americans. That way they can actually feel like they're working for something. It's a better career option and not just a job that you're stuck with. That's going to come with time, I think, but Americans could be in trouble if they don't get a job soon because now they're going to completely run out of funds. That could affect your housing market because people aren't going to be able to pay their mortgage. That could affect your renting market because now people who are renting apartments and houses might not be able to pay their bills either. And of course, it's going to affect businesses because businesses are not going to make those same profits right now. It looks like profits are already starting to go down for a lot of businesses in the United States. All of that money for them to expand and to build their company and hire more workers is going to go away. And some of these companies may end up needing to downsize in order to cut their losses. Which means in 2022, you could start to see the unemployment rate slightly start to rise as we go through the year. As these companies make a lot less money, they're not going to be able to support their current employee base. Especially since they have started to raise their wages since inflation is so high right now. They can't afford to continue paying people more and hiring more people when nobody in their economy is buying their stuff. Businesses are probably going to go under in this situation, and the ones that do survive are going to be a lot smaller for a little while. Which brings us finally to number 3, supply chain issues. The United States has been facing supply chain issues for about 2 years now. When the pandemic started, everything closed down for economic lockdowns. It remained that way for several months. Even when things did pick back up, it was still hard to get products on the shelves. Now, even if we're optimistic, and we say the Russia-Ukraine situation is going to go away sometime very soon, wages are going to improve in the United States, and people are going to continue to buy things, but not so much that demand is through the roof. You still have a huge problem with supply chain issues. The fact of the matter is, if buying habits in the United States don't start to come down, which means demand for everything in our economy doesn't decrease, well, that could lead us into a recession, because now, even if people have money and they want to go out and buy things and go on trips and purchase even more, well, they can't do that because businesses just simply can't afford to make more. And then they can't get anything from overseas, especially right now because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Businesses that aren't even in the wheat, metal, and gas industry are still going to be affected because that is all your supply chain. And if businesses can't get the supply that they need to produce goods, well, then it doesn't matter how much money people have in an economy. Businesses aren't making anything. That kind of creates the same effect that I just described. You now have people that have money, but they can't spend it. So businesses aren't going to get that money because there's nobody buying anything. You now have an entire population that is doing more saving, not because they want to save more, they just can't buy anything. And it further pushes inflation up because now when businesses finally do stock the shelves, well, Americans are so fatigued and frustrated from not being able to buy before that they overbuy. They overpurchase on things and buy too much because they're afraid stores are going to run out of stuff. Spending fuels our economy. 70% of our GDP can be linked back to everyday spending. If Americans are spending way less money on an everyday basis, well, that means our GDP is going to shrink. And if it shrinks for 2 quarters or more, you are automatically in a recession. Now, with all that being said, here is what you need to know about a possible recession in the United States this year. 2021 was a crazy year. We saw record high asset prices and pretty much record high everything, from prices at the grocery store to markets like the auto and housing market. Everything was at a record high. And obviously that's not good for everyone, especially if you're in the market for a new car or a new house. But there is a big change coming in 2022. All those easy money policies that I talked about before, well, they're going away. They're gone now. And the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates to eliminate demand in our economy. They're going to do that as early as this month. That's going to make it a lot harder for people to spend money. The Federal Reserve is doing this to lower inflation. They're kind of forcing inflation to go down because they're forcing Americans to spend less money. Spending won't be zero, but it'll be a lot less. Now, that's going to hurt businesses immediately. As we've seen in the past, an aggressive Federal Reserve can lead to stock market crashes and corrections because businesses are not making nearly as much money as they used to. But it also means that supply chains will have some time to get back to normal. Eventually, businesses will be able to produce all of the materials that the United States needs, but that's only if they start changing a lot of their business practices. This great resignation and anti-work movement is only growing in our economy. Those jobs that companies consider low value, turns out they're actually super high value, because if nobody is working them right now, that's an issue. Companies are starting to push towards automation, but they are nowhere near doing that yet on a mass scale. They rely on those workers to keep the lights on at their establishments. It's the only way for them to make money. So in the short term, companies and corporations are kind of playing a game of chicken between workers and future employees. Who's gonna run out of money first? Is it going to be the businesses and corporations, or is it going to be employees? Because if it's employees, then they have to go out and find any job they can take, or else they're going to lose everything. They're going to collapse financially because they have no money. Or is it going to be the businesses and companies? Because if they have no money, they're going to have to start cutting more employees, and they could potentially file for bankruptcy. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen next. The Russia-Ukraine situation is escalating more and more every day, and prices in the United States have only gone up since about the mid part of 2021. That's likely to continue in the short term because because even when the Federal Reserve takes action against inflation, and even if the Russia-Ukraine situation ends sooner rather than later, well, you're still gonna have problems for a little while until the entire world kind of resets from that. And don't forget, we are technically still in a pandemic, so that kind of creates another problem and potential issue that could pose an even bigger risk to our economy in the future. Do I think it will at this time? It doesn't look like it, but we've seen in the past that that can change on a dime. So the moral of the story is get prepared with your finances now, because it looks like there's a lot of changes coming to the United States in 2022. Well, let's all just stay optimistic and hope that they're good rather than bad. But now I want to hear from you on this issue. What do you think about the United States entering a recession in 2022? Do you think that it's highly likely, or do you think that there is no way that our country is going into a recession this year? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all of the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else that's happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out video breakdowns on this channel 7 days a week, and I've actually got another breakdown ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.